Northern San Luis Obispo County is new to the 19th district, so I'd like to just start by offering you a chance to introduce yourself to those who may not be familiar and tell everyone what you're all about. Just tell us about yourself.
Thank you, Scott. I am Jeff Gorman. I'm Congress, as you say, in the 19th district. That's the central coast just north of Santa Barbara, from about halfway up San Luis Obispo all the way into South San Jose, along the coast, including Monterey and Santa Cruz. And I grew up in Monterey. I was the county party chairman down here in Monterey, where I live, Monterey County. And I've been in municipal government a little bit, and definitely I'm a stock advisor. I've witnessed what's going on with our economy, and I'm very concerned we're going in the wrong direction.
Okay. What are you most passionate about changing or working to make better if you are elected?
Well, that's a great question. My biggest reason for seeking this office is I believe the national government has the sole mandate for security. In other words, the state governments can contribute to the national security effort, but the federal government needs to take firm grasp of that. And I think we have lost our way a little bit with government. We need to get the orientation of the federal government back towards leaving the domestic alone, leaving us, the citizens, alone, and focusing on foreign policy and a good, stable. The reason that is such an important part of my passion is you can't sustain a foreign policy with a weak and faltering domestic economy. So we really need to get our domestic economy going well. We're seeing terrible problems with inflation. If we don't change our ways, they're going to get worse. It's not just about energy. It's not just about food. It's about a mismatch in our economy. We've been paying people not to work. We've been discouraging domestic production of energy, but also all sorts of other goods. We've seen offshoring of the economy. Those are the concerns that I have. And it's not just so that we're rich and prosperous, although that's wonderful. It's also so that a foreign power like communist China can't take advantage of us, and that they will know we will be able to contend with them. And right now, I think we are faltering in that contention.
Washington do about inflation?
So I missed the first part, but I think you said, what should Washington do about inflation?
Yes.
So inflation is first and foremost, a monetary problem. Great listeners will remember the great economists of the 70s pointed that out, that it's easy money that causes inflation. There's also a fiscal side of it. We've run huge trillion-dollar deficits under both parties. It's not particularly a party problem, although I think this administration has a very particular problem with it. We've run big deficits and done unproductive things with them. But we need to get back to, well, first of all, we need to get our debt creation, balance our budget. That's number one. And that is the job of the House of Representatives, which is the office I'm running for. The second thing is energy is a huge factor in the economy. Energy, fossil fuels included, are a substitute for human labor. Food is energy for humans. Fossil fuel is energy for machines. We need energy to get things done, whether it's food or energy. So food or oil. So we need to get our domestic production of oil back on track. We need to encourage things like pipelines, which are much safer than train or truck transport of oil. And we need to look at what our national competitors are doing, like Russia and China. What are they doing about fossil fuels? And we shouldn't be handicapping ourselves to the detriment of our national security, in my opinion. So those things will help us with inflation. But actually, if you look at where we purchase goods from, we have outsourced quite a lot of our productive capacity, and we're vulnerable to supply shocks that are driven by geopolitics, as we've seen through COVID. Now, since really COVID, I think, is over, but we're still suffering quite a lot of supply issues that are exacerbating price problems.
My next question is about energy policies. You've touched on it some, but I'll ask you anyway. What type of energy policies do you support?
Well, I believe in a holistic approach. I think it's important for the average person to be open to all things. I know nuclear has a bit of a bad rap, but actually, if you look at the safety record of nuclear, it's quite safe compared to green energy or fossil fuels. And that's partly because of very effective regulation by the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. But even we think of our worst domestic problem was 3 Mile Island some 35 years ago, 33 years ago. And the reality of that 3 Mile Island episode is no one died. And if you look at truck accidents with trucks full of fuel or refinery fires and these sort of things, nuclear is quite safe. So, but I don't mean to focus too heavily on nuclear. I think hydroelectric is very important. I think building new water capacity will solve our water problem and also give us greater hydroelectric stability and generation total productive capacity. So we need to look at all of them. There's no one that I will favor. I will say this for the betterment of our society. We need to remember that one of the great things about oil is the capacity for it to be transported. So in other words, electric cars have a charging difficulty. It's not insurmountable, but if you want to go on a long haul with a truck, you need quite a lot of energy. And so far, diesel is by far the best solution for long haul trucking.
What accomplishments are you most proud of?
What accomplishments? Well, I am glad that we still have the First and Second Amendments. I don't take personal responsibility for those, but I'm not sure if you mean my own accomplishments or do you mean the accomplishments of liberating Europe during World War II. That was a big one. But in terms of my own accomplishments, well, this is, I think, going to resonate with a lot of people that are frustrated with politics and frustrated with the overbearing government. Is I'm 54 years old. I've spent most of my life minding my own business, and I think if people vote for me and vote for other people with a philosophy like mine, it will be not so much because they expect some miracle of governance. It's because they will appreciate the opportunity to live their life the way they want to live it. And so my accomplishments on the personal side, I have a great daughter. I have solid business. I have lived my life in a beautiful part of the world here on the Central Coast, but I'm not here to brag about what I'm going to do for other people. I think that's a terrible trap that people that are hungry for power set in order to get the people into a subjective mindset where they're dependent on the government for things. I want the American people to be independent of the need for a federal government handout. I want a strong domestic economy. And so I guess one way to look at that, I've got this small business in financial services. And what I do in my business is I encourage people to be self-sufficient and to understand the way that the cycles in the economy will affect their finances and the cycle of their life will affect their finances and be ready for retirement and that sort of thing. So those are a few ways you can slice that onion.
What makes you a better choice for Congress than you?
Well, I think you have to look at track record. If you like the things that Joe Biden has done and you like the things Nancy Pelosi has done, then my opponent is the incumbent and he has a 100% track record of voting with Nancy Pelosi. If you believe that America is being subjugated somewhat, that the American people are being sold a bill of goods, you feel deceived by the promises of green energy and other things about the now broken California dream, I think you should look at the alternative. And that's the biggest contrast. My opponent is a guy he's seeking power for power's sake. He's pursuing power within the Democratic Party. He's taken a leadership position under Nancy Pelosi. He's all in with her plan. I just stand totally against that plan. I think it's the wrong direction.
Okay. Jeff, that's all the questions I have for you. Is there anything else you'd like the voters to know?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of interest nowadays in what's going to happen nationwide. I think our founders were very smart about the way they set up the Constitution, and we do need a little bit of countering of the direction that Joe Biden has taken the country. So I would say a House takeover by the Republican Party will be very good for this country. We need to have an investigation into the possibility that the national interest was subverted or sold out by Hunter Biden for the benefit of the President of the United States. That's a very serious allegation, which is out there, not being taken seriously by this Congress. That's one of the biggest things in my book is what happened with this Hunter Biden laptop cover-up story and the use of heavy-handed tactics on Facebook and Twitter suppress that story. That's still many Americans are not familiar with that story. So I hope people tune in and learn about that.
Jeff, thank you for your time.
Been my pleasure, Scott.